Imagine a machine that could husk your corn at sunrise and combine your soybeans by sundown. One operator, no second tractor. Farmers called it the motorcycle, and it terrified the competition. It was too strange, too soon, and the industry buried it. But that machine wasn't alone. The cornfields hid a whole graveyard of brilliant harvesters that arrived before the world was ready. Geniuses in steel, crushed by the machines that stole their ideas. These are 10 of them. Number 10. The two-row mounted picker revolution. Let's start with the machines that quietly rewrote how an entire generation of farmers brought in the corn. By the 1950s, nearly every major manufacturer offered a two-row mounted corn picker. And if you say mounted corn picker to an old-timer today, this is what they picture. The classics rolled off the lines with names that still stir memories. The John Deere 226, 227 and later the 237. The International 24, then the 2M and the 2MH. Here's what made them special and why they earn the number 10 spot. A mounted picker didn't trail behind the tractor. It bolted directly onto it, wrapping around the operator so the machine harvested as the tractor drove straight into the standing corn. And that solved a problem that had frustrated farmers for years. With a pull-behind picker, you had to open a field first, driving the tractor down the first rows and crushing that corn before the picker could ever reach it. Along fence rows and headlands, that meant sacrificing good grain just to make room. A mounted picker fixed it. The operator sat essentially inside the machine, with chains and sprockets turning just inches away, and could open a field without running over and wasting a single row. Farmers with mounted pickers often opened fields as a favor for neighbors still running pull-type machines. They weren't perfect. Mounting one was a genuine chore, swapping tractor wheels, bolting on brackets and radiator screens, hanging the picker and elevator. Some farmers spent 3 evenings after chores just getting the thing on. But once it was on, it transformed the harvest. The two-row mounted picker was the machine that took corn harvesting from a slow, wasteful crawl to something efficient and precise, and it dominated American cornfields through the 50s. It was the workhorse foundation that everything fancier on this list was built to beat. Number 9. The John Deere No. 300 pull-type corn picker. Sometimes a machine is ahead of its time, not because of some wild new feature, but because it was simply built so well that it refused to die. That's the John Deere No. 300, and here's the proof. Farmers are still running them today. In the 21st century, decades after the corn picker was supposedly made obsolete, the No. 300 was a two-row pull-type picker. The kind of dependable, no-nonsense machine that John Deere built its reputation on. Ask people who've run one against the competition, and you'll hear the same thing over and over. Run a John Deere 300, they'll tell you, and you'll never want to look at anything else again. It had the hydraulic lift, the capacity, and the sheer reliability that made it a favorite across the Corn Belt. But the real story is what happened after corn pickers were finished. When the combine took over and pickers vanished from working farms, most of them were scrapped, parted out, or left to rust in fence rows. The good ones survived, and the John Deere 300 was one of the survivors. Today, collectors and small operators pull these machines out and put them right back to work. One collector in Illinois uses a John Deere 300 two-row pull-type picker to harvest ear corn, bag it, and sell it as squirrel corn to a local store. Others run them at historical demonstration days, showing younger generations how the harvest used to sound and smell. There's still a genuine market for ear corn, for livestock, for wildlife feed, for seed, and for that niche, a well-kept 300 does the job as well as it ever did. That's a kind of ahead of its time that doesn't get enough credit. Engineers in the 1950s built a machine so durable and so well suited to its task that it outlived the entire technology it belonged to. The combine didn't beat the John Deere 300 because the 300 was bad. It beat it because the whole world changed, and the machine just kept working anyway. That's why it lands at number 9. Number 8. The pull-type picker sheller and high-moisture corn. Now we get to an idea that was so far ahead of its time, it's basically how corn is still harvested today. And in the 1950s, almost nobody could do it. For hundreds of years, the entire system of corn harvesting was built around one assumption. You pick the whole ear, husk still partly on, haul it back to the farm, and pile it in a crib to dry naturally over the winter. Shelling, stripping the kernels off the cob, came later as a separate job. The corn had to be dry before you could safely store shelled kernels, because wet kernels in a bin would rot and spoil. The picker sheller blew that whole system apart. These were machines that picked and shelled the corn right in the field, in one pass, giving you shelled kernels straight into the wagon, instead of ear corn into a crib. Why was that revolutionary? Because it lined up perfectly with a new technology arriving at the same time. Grain bins with aeration and heating units that could dry the crop artificially. Suddenly, farmers didn't have to wait for the corn to dry on the stalk. They could harvest earlier, at much higher moisture, with the crop still in great shape, and let the bins do the drying. The high moisture actually helped because the wetter kernels clung to the cob until they reached the machine's threshing mechanism. In the mid-1950s, this capability was so rare that custom operators built entire side businesses around it. One Indiana family ran a machine that could shell corn in the field specifically because almost none of their neighbors could. They'd travel farm to farm, shelling high-moisture corn for people who wanted it to feed their hogs. Harvest earlier, at high moisture, shell in the field, dry in the bin. Read that again, because that is the modern corn harvest described in the 1950s. The picker-sheller pointed straight at the future. It just needed the combine to catch up and do it better. For getting the concept exactly right, decades early, it's number 8. Number 7. The John Deere No. 227 picker with the No. 50 sheller attachment. Here's a machine that solved a very specific, very real dilemma, and it did it with a clever bit of modular thinking that feels surprisingly modern. By the mid-1950s, American agriculture was caught in a genuine transition. Ear corn was still king. Farmers with dairy or beef cattle wanted whole ear corn to feed their livestock, and they had corn cribs to fill. But shelled corn was clearly the future. Easier to sell, store in bins, and haul to the elevator. Lots of farmers wanted both. They just couldn't justify buying two completely separate machines. John Deere's answer was elegant. Take the famous John Deere No. 227 mounted corn picker, already a Corn Belt favorite, and offer a sheller attachment for it, the No. 50. And the genius was in how the swap worked. The main harvesting unit, the part that was a pain to mount, stayed right on the tractor. To switch from picking ear corn to shelling in the field, you just changed the back end. The elevator attachment came off, and the sheller went on in its place. Run it as a picker, and the husked ears rode the elevator up into a wagon, ready for the crib. Run it with the sheller attachment, and those ears fell into a sheller bed instead, and you drove away with gravity wagons full of clean-shelled corn to haul straight to the elevator. There's a beautiful photo from 1958 of exactly this setup. A John Deere 227 picker with a No. 50 sheller mounted on a Model 630 tractor, capturing that in-between moment in farm history perfectly. For the farmer who hadn't fully committed to shelled corn but could see it coming, this was the perfect bridge. Pick ear corn for the cattle while the cribs had room, then shell the rest once they were full. It was one platform, two jobs, minimal fuss, a buy-the-base machine, swap the attachment philosophy that modern equipment makers now build their entire catalogs around. For reading the transition so well and building the machine to straddle it, the 227 and sheller combo is number 7. Number 6. The Ford one-row mounted picker sheller. Everybody remembers the big two-row machines. But some of the most forward-thinking corn pickers were the small, rare, easy-to-overlook ones. And the Ford one-row mounted picker sheller is exactly that kind of hidden gem. Go back to the era before two-row mounted pickers took over, and the mounted picker was usually a one-row affair, sized for the smaller row crop tractors that dotted every farm. Several companies built them. John Deere made an early one-row mounted picker. International Harvester built them too, including the 14M and the McCormick C10 designed to fit onto small tractors. There's even a rare one-row picker built specifically for the Farmall Model C. But Ford did something that made its machine stand out. Ford didn't just build a one-row mounted picker, it built and sold one that could pick and shell corn. Stop and appreciate how bold that was. This was a compact, one-row tractor-mounted machine, and Ford managed to fold both the picking and the shelling functions into it. While the rest of the industry was still firmly in the pick-the-whole-ear, shell-it-later mindset, Ford was offering a small farmer, the kind with a modest tractor and modest acreage, the ability to drive into a field and come out with shelled corn, all from a machine that hung right on the tractor. That's the pattern you keep seeing on this list. And it's exactly what ahead of its time means. The combine would eventually make field shelling universal, but it took a full-size, expensive, self-propelled machine to do it. Ford was reaching for that same future years earlier, in a package a one-tractor family farm could actually afford. These one-row mounted machines are rare finds today, and collectors prize them precisely because so few people even realize they existed. A Ford picker that shells, hanging off a little post-war tractor. It's a glimpse of an ambition that was simply too early for the technology to fully deliver. For punching so far above its size, the Ford one-row picker sheller earns number 6. Number 5. The International Harvester 234 Mounted Corn Picker. If you want to understand why some corn pickers were ahead of their time, look at how long they kept working. The International Harvester 234 is a perfect case study. A machine so versatile and so adaptable that examples of it were still bringing in corn into the late 1980s, long after the world had moved on to combines. The 234 was a two-row mounted picker, but IH loaded it with the kind of flexibility that most machines of its day couldn't touch. It came with a husking bed built from as many as 12 rolls to clean the ears thoroughly. You could add a sheller unit to it, turning it from an ear corn picker into a field sheller. It could be fitted with stripper plates to change how it handled the crop. And crucially, IH offered bracket kits so the same picker could be mounted on different models of tractor, and according to the parts books, even adapted to fit other makes entirely with the right hardware. That adaptability is the whole point. This wasn't a one-tractor, one-job, throw-it-away machine. It was a modular system designed to be reconfigured, remounted, and kept useful as a farmer's equipment changed around it. And it delivered. One well-documented 234 spent years at Middle Tennessee State University's Agriculture Department, mounted on a 504 farmall, and it stayed in service picking corn all the way into the late 1980s, only retiring when the tractor's engine finally blew, at which point they traded it toward a combine. That's a mounted corn picker earning its keep for something like 3 decades. Little touches showed the thoughtful engineering too, like the air snoot mounted on the front of the tractor to keep trash and dust out of the radiator so it wouldn't overheat during the dusty work of picking. The 234 represents the mounted corn picker at the absolute peak of its development. Versatile, tough, and endlessly reconfigurable. Built right at the moment the combine was about to make the whole category extinct. It was arguably the best version of an idea just as that idea's time was running out. And for outlasting its own era by decades, the IH-234 takes number 5. Number 4. The Rosenthal Cornbine. Now for a machine that failed so completely the industry nearly forgot it, and yet was chasing exactly the right idea years before anyone could make it work. This is the Rosenthal Cornbine. The company behind it had corn in its blood. The Rosenthal Corn Husker Company of Milwaukee had been a corn machinery specialist for generations, having pioneered development of the mechanical corn husker back in 1896. For decades, Rosenthal built the big stationary husker shredders that farmers fed their harvested corn into. But by the late 1940s, the company's leaders could see the writing on the wall. A firm that only made stationary shredders was going to get left behind as harvesting kept advancing into the field itself. So Rosenthal swung for the fences with something genuinely new, and the name told you everything: the Cornbine. A corn machine that borrowed the concept of a grain combine built to shell the corn out in the field rather than picking whole ears to be shelled back at the farm. That was the future. Shelling in the field, in one pass, skipping the crib entirely. It's precisely what the combine corn head would go on to make standard practice across the entire country. But the Cornbine flopped. Sales were disappointing from the very start, and by 1952 the company had to face the fact that the Cornbine was a commercial failure. Rosenthal simply couldn't break into a corn picker market that was already crowded with established refined machines from the big manufacturers, and its bold field shelling design was more than most farmers of the moment were ready to buy. Here's the tragedy and the lesson wrapped together. The Cornbine didn't fail because it was a bad idea. It failed because it was the right idea. Brought to market before the surrounding technology, the artificial grain drying, the shelled corn infrastructure, the combine engineering had matured enough to support it. A few years later, the exact concept Rosenthal was reaching for would sweep American agriculture under a different name. The Cornbine was simply too early, and that pure doomed foresight is why it earns number 4. Number 3. The new Idea Uni-Harvester. Some machines are ahead of their time in the lab. The new Idea Uni-Harvester was ahead of its time on the ground because it brought a level of harvesting capability to small family and dairy farms that the industry basically refused to offer them. The Uni-system concept started with Minneapolis-Moline, but around 1965 the new Idea company took it over and refined it into a beloved line of machines with model numbers farmers still recite fondly: the 701, 702, 706, 708, and later the 800 and 802. Over the years, they were powered by all kinds of engines, from Continental and Ford gas engines to a big Chevrolet 6 to Cummins and Perkins diesels. The idea was simple and brilliant. One self-propelled power unit and a whole family of interchangeable harvesting attachments that let it become a corn picker, a picker-sheller, a combine, or a forage harvester. And unlike the fussy-mounted pickers of the previous generation, changing attachments on a Uni took just a few wrenches. A couple of experienced people could swap the whole front end in about an hour. But the real magic was who it served. Through the 1960s and 70s, most equipment dealers wouldn't even sell a self-propelled harvester to a small operation. That kind of capacity was reserved for the big farms. The Uni-Harvester was the exception. It gave smaller dairy and cattle operations a self-propelled machine that could shell corn, chop forage, and combine grain. Real modern harvesting power scaled down to a size and price a family farm could actually justify. It wasn't flawless. Owners will freely admit the Unis could be a bit underpowered and short on traction, especially on hills with a loaded wagon behind. But farmers loved them anyway, because nothing else offered that mix of versatility and access. And here's the kicker. They're so useful that some are still out there. Devoted owners keep small orange new Idea Uni-Harvesters running in the 21st century, farming a couple hundred acres with a machine most people wrote off decades ago. For democratizing self-propelled multi-crop harvesting and refusing to quit, the new Idea Uni-Harvester is number 3. Number 2. The Minneapolis-Moline Uni-Farmor Uni-System. This is the machine that started it all. The original modular, self-propelled, do-almost-everything harvesting platform, and one of the most audacious ideas anyone put on wheels in the entire 20th century. This is the Minneapolis-Moline Uni-Farmor. Around 1950, out of the Minneapolis-Moline plant in Hopkins, Minnesota, came a machine unlike anything most farmers had ever seen. It was a self-propelled power unit, a stripped-down, engine-forward tractor with an operator's station, and the whole point was that you bolted different harvesting machines onto it. One base unit, many jobs. The advertising promised 6 different harvesting combinations from a single machine: a corn picker, a sheller, a combine, a corn head, a forager, and a row crop attachment. The sales pitch was almost unbelievable for its day. Husk corn in the morning, the brochures said, and combine soybeans that same afternoon with the same machine. Switch from one harvesting job to another in a matter of minutes. Farmers, half in awe and half in disbelief, gave it a nickname. Because of that lean, engine-out front look, they called it the motorcycle. And it could genuinely do things nothing else could. In the mid-1950s, families ran the Minneapolis-Moline Uni with a sheller attachment as a custom business, traveling farm to farm, shelling high-moisture corn, for the simple reason that hardly anyone else owned a machine capable of shelling corn in the field at all. Like everything this far ahead of its time, it had real limits. The early power units could be underpowered. That little engine struggled to pull a loaded wagon up a hill with the sheller working, and traction was a recurring complaint. It was more machine and more concept than much of the market was ready to embrace. But look at the DNA. A single self-propelled platform with quick change attachments for every crop and every job. That is the blueprint the whole industry would eventually chase, and it's the direct ancestor of the new Idea Unis that came after it. Minneapolis-Moline sketched the future of versatile harvesting around 1950, and the world spent decades catching up. For sheer vision, the Uni-Farmor is number 2. Number 1, the Massey-Harris Self-Propelled Corn Picker. And at number 1, the machine that broke the single most fundamental rule in corn harvesting. The machine that first cut the cord between the picker and the tractor. This is the Massey-Harris Self-Propelled Corn Picker, introduced in 1946. To understand why this earns the top spot, you have to understand how total the tractor's dominance was. For the entire history of mechanical corn harvesting, everything depended on the tractor. The tractor pulled the picker, or the tractor carried the picker, but the picker was always the passenger. Every design decision flowed from that relationship. Then, in 1946, Massey-Harris tore up the rule book and introduced the first practical self-propelled corn picker, a machine that carried its own engine and drove itself down the rows. No separate tractor required. The picker had become the vehicle. This was Massey-Harris doing what Massey-Harris did best. The company had already shaken the harvest world with self-propelled combines, famously sending fleets of them north each season in the harvest brigade to bring in grain across the continent. Applying that same self-propelled thinking to corn put Massey-Harris years ahead of nearly every competitor, most of whom were still deeply committed to pull-type and mounted designs and would stay that way for a long time. Being first came with the usual price. The self-propelled pickers of that era could struggle for grip on a slick day, climbing a hill or working a side slope while towing a loaded wagon. The machine sometimes just didn't have the traction to keep going. These were problems no one had faced yet, because no one had built a machine like this yet. But the direction was unmistakable, and history proved it right in the most emphatic way possible. Self-propelled harvesting didn't just catch on, it became the entire future of the field. Every self-propelled combine devouring corn across America today is the descendant of an idea Massey-Harris committed to in 1946, when the rest of the industry was still hitching pickers to tractors. They saw the shape of modern harvesting a full generation early. For being the machine that first drove itself into the future, the 1946 Massey-Harris Self-Propelled Corn Picker is number 1. Which of these would you have wanted in your shed? Drop it in the comments. And if you love the forgotten iron that built American agriculture, hit subscribe, because there's a lot more harvest history where this came from. Thanks for watching.